We are happy to present you with the PanelMASTER IV, a raised panel door machine and the horizontal shaft shaper with 4 heads. The PanelMASTER IV can cut out any frame and now includes all 4 cuts for a raised panel door. This means that it can cut the stile, rail, raised panel, and door edge detail cuts. Here are some of the improvements that we have added to the PanelMASTER IV since the production of the PanelMASTER II. We have added the 4th cutting head that allows the machine to complete the door edge detail cut. The PanelMASTER IV now has split bearing housing shafts that can be changed out more easily. We have created heavier housing, and now it has a machined and doweled aluminum frame for accuracy. The 2 shorter cutting shafts in place of the 1 longer shaft reduces vibration. This contributes to a machine with much less vibration than any of the previous models. Now we will begin by showing you how to set up and adjust the PanelMASTER IV.
Before doing any adjustments on our machine, as in any machine, make sure it is disconnected from the power before we do so. Okay, now we're going to show you how to change out the shafts in a PanelMASTER IV. I've already removed my bolts that hold the table down to the main frame and the 2 guards on the side. So I can set these guards off. I can grab my safety pin. As I said, the bolts that are across here that hold it down on each end are already removed. And we can raise the table on up. Now I have the cap screws on top of my shaft, here, on top of the bearings. I've got those loosened. I can set these off. Now the shaft is just sitting there. This shaft has the same cutter that is part of our set of cutters that is over here in our rail cut. So the inside of our door, or the inside of our rail will match the outside of the door in this particular case. So I can set this shaft out. I can grab a different shaft. The bearings have little nubs to keep them from twisting in the housing. Those nubs need to be pointed straight down, and they will fit down into that housing, and you'll feel the click as it falls in place. Then I can put the bearing housings back on and lock it down. This here cutter is a door edge detail cutter, which gives the back cut on there so that you don't have to use knobs or handles on your doors. You'd have the lip on the edge of the door. The orange are the carbide cutters, the yellow are the tungsten cutters. Once again, for our purposes here, we are wanting this cutter head in here, so we're going to set it back in place. Once again, making sure I line up and feel the shaft or the bearings click down into place. Now I can put my bearing housings back down, tighten everything up. Okay, once again, this cutter shaft was already set in location where we want our cutters. But if we were starting new, we would have our arbors loose. Key for the first arbor and its set screw. The second arbor on a shaft, we always want to go into the opposite with its key and set screw. Now, while we're here, we can loosen and slide these. And we want to make sure that we have all four cutters slid in place before we close it down. Otherwise, our cutter could come up into our guards and damage our cutters. But in this case, we've already got them all in position. But when you have the head up like this, table up like this, we can easily move our cutters side to side. Now, if for some reason we need to adjust the cutters side to side on our shaft, rather than raising the table, we can get at them by removing the back cover, which is the discharge side of the machine. Now to adjust our arbor side to side, now that we got the back cover off, we can reach up underneath here, loosen our set screws, slide our arbor back and forth, and retighten it.
Changing the cutter shaft.
Okay, once again, we're looking at the cutters here. This would be our raised panel. This would be our door edge detail. On our cutter shaft, if we have it up in the machine, I have the two bearings that lock it in place. But I could take this bearing loose, remove the nut on this end, slide off this cutter, stick another cutter back on, retighten the nut, put the bearing back on, leave the bearing loose until we are in place, and then retighten the housing of the bearing. By doing that, the cutter is going to line up into the same place every time. To change our raised panel, once again, we are at the inside is the head of it, the nut is to the outside, so we would be removing the pulley and the bearing. If you do only loosen one bearing at a time, so this bearing would be off, this one would be set in place. We could pull everything off of this end, stick her back on, reassemble it, set it back into the PanelMASTER, lock the bearings into place, and then lock the collar of the bearing. That will keep this side of every one of our cutters in the same place. Now we can have preloaded shafts. Some customers are just loading up their arbors and sliding them on each time, in which case you're going to have to adjust your location of your arbor every time. Now here's the door edge cutter, but if I want it to match the same cut on the outside of the rail as on the inside of the rail, I would want this cutter. So if we would look down in our stack of cutters, that would be called the pattern detail cutter, which is cutter number 3 out of a scope and pattern set from Freeborn. So if that is what we want to do, we want to order a scope and pattern set plus an extra cutter number 3.
Cutting a raised panel door.
Here we have the 5 boards that make up a raised panel door, and we're ready to cut our raised panel door. First cut I'm going to do will be the inside cut on all 4 rails. Let's start the machine and cut them. We have made those 4 cuts. Now is the time to cut the style cut on the end of our short rails. To do that, we grab our style jig. We want to make sure we line up our board such that we are cutting the pattern the right direction and not on the opposite side. So we place our style jig in place, drop our board down to our stop bolt, lock it, start. Here we've made our first cut, and we can see that it slides in properly against our rail. Now make the other 3 remaining cuts. Our cut was like this. We want to flip our board this direction, set her back down. Now grabbing the second rail, repeating the process. Now I want to cut the 4 edges of our raised panel. Now we have all the sides of our door cut. We can set our raised panel into place. Set our stiles into place. Push that against our raised panel. We have our panel all assembled, ready to be glued up. And once we have it glued up, we can use the door edge detail around the outside as we showed with just a plain panel earlier. The back side, with the back cutter, we are flat all the way across here and all the way across the front. If all of our boards are the same thickness, which is what we want. It makes it easier to set her in place and slide across our raised panel cutter, or our door edge cutter. Now for setting our fixture or our jig for cutting the outside door edge. Once again, my combination sliding square. In this case, I have a rub bearing to set down to, and I set it down to where we're on the rub bearing and lock it. If I'm not running a rub bearing and using a door edge detail cutter, I'd want to turn it so that the cutter was pointed straight up and set right down into the bottom of the center of the cutter. This gives me the distance. I just have a panel as opposed to a finished door here that we're going to put the edge detail onto. Get my clamps lined up and in position. Now the distance we had measured on our machine, we will slide over to where it just touches and clamp. Do the same on the other end. And clamp it. Once again, I'll check both sides again. Make sure we're still okay. Now we are ready to cut the edge of a door. Our T-track sits on top of the fence. And we can slide it in place and slide it on through. I'm going to turn it on. Now we have the detail for the edge of our door.